this is episode 1. In this episode, and in every episode I imagine, we're going to look at least one simple sentence structure. We're going to look at a short reading passage that will be of political interest. All of the examples are of some political significance. We're going to look at one more difficult idiom, and we're going to take at least one character and break it down into its radicals, which is to say, break it down into its component parts.
我无论多忙，都要抽时间到乡亲们中走一走，看一看。
Although I may not have much in common with the Chairman politically, I can certainly appreciate that he uses simple vocabulary and simple sentence structure in a sophisticated way. However, even with these short clauses, these short simple phrases, you find that to understand what he's saying, you encounter idiom after idiom after idiom.
我无论多忙，
So here, 我无论多忙, we have to understand both 无论 and 无论多. So we kind of get two idioms for the price of one. They're both very useful. They're both very commonly used. Reading the examples top to bottom in the center of the screen here. 无论多年轻,
无论多年轻,
无论多年轻, no matter how young you are, no matter how youthful you may be. Now, I'm using all examples that I've taken from real current usage found in basically newspaper articles on the internet. You might be able to guess. This is from a discussion of skincare, moisturizers, skin creams. No matter how young you are, you might want to spend a ton of money on skincare lotion. 无论多年轻,
无论多年轻,
Second example, 无论多难, right? So 难过的难.
无论多难,
No matter how hard, no matter how difficult it is. This is from a political statement, which actually read in full was saying, no matter how hard it is, we still have to learn to embrace one another. So interesting political sentiment. 无论多难, no matter how hard, no matter how difficult. This is all kind of level 1 vocabulary, aside from this idiom, 无论多, and 无论多 gives us the sense of no matter how much, notwithstanding how great the quantity, the difficulty, whatever it may be. So our third example, 无论多想改变.
无论多想改变,
No matter how much I wanted to change, no matter how much I wanted to change, I guess I was still stuck being myself, is the sentiment of that sentence. 无论 without the 多 we have here in this example on the bottom half of the screen. 无论他怎么说, all right? No matter what he said. 无论他怎么说, this is from a political context where the current leader of Taiwan is actually speaking about the man she faced off with in the elections, saying, well, no matter what he said, Taiwan is nevertheless an independent country. So as you can imagine, this use of 无论, it's adaptable to many sentiments and many circumstances, and it is not always negative in tone. It is not always castigating. It is not always reproachful in tone. The actual example we have here from the chairman of the Communist Party of China, from the leader of China, Xi Jinping, he's saying, 我无论多忙, no matter how busy I may be, no matter how busy I was, right? So it's actually in a positive or somewhat wistful sense that he's using it.
我无论多忙，都要抽时间到
Why pretend that Chinese is easy? Even when Chinese is easy, it's really pretty difficult, and this is a great example of that.
抽时间,
I did recognize this verb, but I knew it from completely irrelevant words with completely irrelevant meanings. You might know this from the verb meaning to smoke cigarettes. You see it in signs telling you not to smoke cigarettes. I knew it from completely unrelated words related to abstract reasoning. Guess what? The fundamental root meaning of this verb, completely unknown to me, is to pull something out, to draw something out.
我无论多忙，都要抽时间到
So what he's saying is, no matter how busy he may be, he still has to find the time.
都要抽时间到
So you can also ask yourself the question, would you prefer to just memorize this as a 3-character idiom, or do you want to take the time to try to break down and understand the root meaning of this verb cho? Tone 1, cho! Do you want to take the time to try to memorize the range of meanings it has in combination? because in this case, there is a dizzying, unbelievable array of meanings associated with this one simple character.
都要抽时间到乡亲们中
The first character here you need to know from the unrelated word 家乡. Well, I suppose it's as related as any two words are in Chinese.
家乡
The Chinese have a cultural conviction that each and every one of us has a special town, a special city, a special neighborhood, somewhere in the world that we are indelibly and magically linked to from our birth forward. And that is your 家乡. So your 家乡, it is not the same as your hometown in English. Their idea of what your 家乡 is quite different from any cultural concept we have. So whether this is level 1 vocabulary or level 10 vocabulary, if you actually talk to Chinese people, you need to know this word and this concept, 家乡, from a very early date in your practicing, you're using the Chinese language. I warned you at the start of the video that we'd take at least one character and break it down into its components, discuss the radicals that comprise the character. And in this case, interestingly, the traditional character makes more sense than the simplified character. You should be able to recognize the symbol for food right there at the center of the character. Of course, the character we're talking about is xiang, or we might say 家乡的乡,
家乡的乡
meaning the character xiang as in the word 家乡. Right in the middle, we're looking at the food radical. Unfortunately, it is a somewhat corrupted version of the food radical. There's a difference between corruption and simplification. Just for no good reason, it is not quite identical to the half-width form of the food radical that you would have seen in many different characters. To the left and to the right of the food radical, we have, coherently enough, the mirrored image of a person kneeling. Okay? If you look this up in the dictionary, you're going to get some distracting information about the city wall radical and so on and so forth. But without digressing into too many details, you can see in the lower left corner of the screen here that we have within the historical record a much more symmetrical way of drawing this character. It was two people sitting on opposite sides of a pot of cooking food, and that was how we drew the character xiang. Now, unfortunately, if you look at the simplification of the character, the modern simplification carried out by the Communist Party of China in the top right-hand corner of the screen, shown using white ink, they have only kept one kneeling figure from the left-hand side of the character. And of course, in all versions of the character in modern use today, it has been stylized to the point of incomprehensibility.
乡亲们中
Now you should be able to put the meaning of the phrase together, even if you're unfamiliar with each and every one of the words comprising it. This is qin, as in 母亲, 父亲, and 亲戚.
母亲父亲亲戚
It's also noteworthy that when you hear the leader of China speaking,
乡亲们中
there isn't anything terribly distinctive about the Q sound, the consonant that we write in pinyin as Q, in contrast to a CH sound. That varies with dialect, but it also varies depending on what vowel is paired with this consonant Q.
乡亲们中
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 Someone might, reproach you or correct you in the classroom if you just pronounce the letter Q as a regular CH sound. But sometimes, in praxis, that is what the Q really sounds like. All right, so you guys have probably guessed the meaning already, right? So we learned that xiang is the same xiang that we know from jiaxiang, and qin is the same qin that we know from fuqin, wuqin, qinqi. So therefore, xiangqin zhong, amongst the townsfolk, when he's walking amongst the villagers.
乡亲们中走一走看一看
So this is the fourth and final sentence pattern, closing this short quotation. 走一走看一看
走一走看一看
To have a walk around and have a look around. This is a sentence pattern I use all the time in Chinese and that I've used from my first days as a beginner, and I use it so frequently for the same reason that Chairman Xi Jinping is using it here. It is very easy for Chinese people to understand. So if somebody asks you to do something, You can say to them, well, I don't know if I can do it. I'm not confident, but I can have a try. 试一试. For me as a teacher, very often I would ask students in the classroom to try to do something, to try to say something, even though maybe they didn't know how to say it or they didn't know how to do it. So you'd say 试一试, right? So 走一走, 看一看, 试一试. I don't know if anyone's ever made a list of all of the verbs that can fit into this idiom or sentence pattern, but that closes this kind of wistful reflection from Chairman Xi Jinping. What is he telling you? No matter how busy he may be, nevertheless, he always finds the time. So remember, cho, the meaning of this, the root meaning is like pulling the string out of a spinning top, to draw something out, to pull something out. He manages to find the time. He manages to pull out the spare time and the gaps in between doing other things. This kind of image. He manages to find the time to walk around and have a look around amongst the villagers, amongst the townsfolk.
我无论多忙，都要抽时间到乡亲们中走一走，看一看。
And I promised you there would be a reading passage here in episode 1, and indeed there is. So if you would like to study this on your own, we will return to it in episode 2, and then you'll get analysis, translation, discussion, similar to what you've seen here in episode 1, applied to this reading passage and more, with the same pattern, and again using examples taken from newspapers, current political events of our time. The first 6 characters are a Western name transcribed, or you might say transliterated into Chinese. So this is à-bas-le-ciel, okay? Norman Bethune. 努尔曼白求恩是加拿大共产党员，他是个有名的大夫，为了帮助中国的抗日战争，1937年来到中国。See you next episode.